So, hi there folks, it's me, Smotown, and we're back this week with another lore video, and this time we're looking at the Sable Church of Londor. Now, I don't usually do this because I think it's fairly self-explanatory, but I will this time. Spoiler alert, what I'll be talking about can affect the outcome of the game in a certain way, so if you don't want to hear anything like that, please don't carry on watching, because I will be talking about it freely. But with that aside, let's get talking. So the best place to start when looking at lore is at the beginning. And at this case, the beginning is at character creation. The preset for Londor Shadow of Death tells us that Londor is a realm of hollows and the old. We can learn more about Londor from the Dead Again miracle, as its description tells us. Sacrilegious miracle of the Sable Church of Londor. Bless corpses, transforming them into traps. Londor, the Hollow Realm, is a society of undead comprised of corpses and shades of those who led unsavoury lives. Is such a blessing really something someone must ponder? We can therefore see that Londor has a hollow society. Straight away, this should grab a Dark Souls fan attention. We have heard of undead cities before, but a city of hollows is something completely different. It's quite a bizarre concept, in fact. Hollows are, to us, mindless creatures, and when cities go hollow, they cannot function anymore. The undead burg from Dark Souls 1 being one example. We first meet a resident of Londor when we make it to the undead settlement, in the form of Yol of Londor. And he tells us,
I am Yol of Londor, a pilgrim as you can see, only somehow I failed to die as was ordained. Well, perhaps my calling lies elsewhere.
We can therefore see he is a pilgrim of Londor, and this suggests a religion to us. This religion is the Sable Church of Londor, which seems to not only be a religious body, but the ruling body of Londor for all intents and purposes. Sable can mean dark or black in this context. We later see that leading members of the church wear black, and that the church is sometimes actually referred to as the Black Church. We can also see later that the church offers salvation to hollows, who bear the dark sign. We can get a suggestion of the physical structure of the church from the Morian blade, for its description states, a twisted sword resembling the towers of Londor's Sable Church. 8 branching blades and thorns induce bleeding. The church's blessing makes this weapon revel in the agony of its owner. Heavy losses of HP boost attack, a curse most befitting its deformed appearance. The church itself, therefore, had twisted towers, much like the Morian blade has branches. Morian is a type of dark quartz, and considering the dark appearance of the blade, this is most likely the connotation intended. It also reveals the dark nature of the church. Its blessing makes the weapon more powerful the more the victim suffers. But what does the Sable Church believe in? We can learn more if we look at one of their holy texts, the Braille Londor Divine Tome. Its description states, a Braille Tome of Londor, first spoken by Lilian of the Sable Church. Give this to a storyteller to learn the miracles of Londor. This is a forbidden tome, as it offers salvation to the hollows, and conversely, curses all things living. The Sable Church is converse to anything we've ever been led to believe over the course of the 3 games. The Way of White lead undead hunts, and they imprison hollows. The Way of White sees no future in the undead. They upkeep the ways of Gwyn and the first gods. That is, the fire must be linked, and the curse that causes hollowing must be resisted. The Sable Church seems to offer the exact opposite, and embraces this side of humanity. In this way, the tome is seen as forbidden, and it curses all things living, whilst offering salvation to those who are not living. This holy text is one of the tales that form the basis of the Sable Church. This tale was told by Lilian, who is one of the 3 sisters who founded the Sable Church. We learn this from the miracle Dark Blade, for it states, "Miracle of the Sable Church of Londor. Reinforces right weapon with dark." The 3rd daughter, Lillian, was one of the founders of the Sable Church, is said to recount tales that portray the suffering and conflict of Hollows. Lillian is the 3rd daughter, or the youngest. Her tales are clearly seen as holy, and they once again paint Hollows in a much different light from that which we have seen, especially from the way of White does. They aren't just mindless beasts, but they are beings who have suffered and endured much. The Sable Church offers salvation to these Hollows, rather than the suffering and misunderstanding offered by the rest of the world. Not only this, but when we meet Yuria, another mentor and sister to Lillian, she tells us that Hollows are the most honest expression of men. Whether the sisters genuinely believe this to be true, or whether they are just galvanizing Hollows for their own gains, remains to be seen. However, it is noteworthy that Yuria herself is a Hollow, as she later refers to "we Hollows." This probably doesn't matter, but considering who their master is, it isn't too surprising what they espouse and how they have these views about humanity. But we'll get to this later, and we'll discuss the master later. We can say that the way of Londor is despised by the outside world, who still follow the morals of the old gods. The untrue Dark Ring gives us an insight into how Londor is perceived by the rest of the world. It states, "Retain human appearance while hollow. The Hollows of Londor are wretchedly aged, fraught with deceit, and dubiously secretive. It is no wonder that they are deeply detested." We can therefore see that the citizens of Londor are hollow, old, and secretive. This is certainly supported by the very nature of this ring, which would hide their true appearance from those from the outside world. This secretive and deceitful aspect of Londor is reflected in the description of the Purging Stone. The Purging Stone states, "Reduces undead curse buildup and cures hollowing. Inhabitants of Londor, the land of hollows, use this secret treasure to feign normalcy. Occasionally, a hollow fools even himself and turns upon his own kind." This stone is interesting for a couple of reasons. Firstly, it confirms that hollows actually have presence of mind to hide their appearance to the rest of humanity, who see hollows as mindless creatures, needing to be imprisoned or destroyed. Whereas here, we see that hollows are deceitfully hiding their true nature. Secondly, it states that a hollow may fool even himself through the use of the stone and turn on his kind. Turn on his own kind. What a bizarre thing to say. This suggests a camaraderie between hollows, to the extent that they see themselves as a separate kind or branch of humanity. Yule of Londor tells us he is a pilgrim, but he has failed to die as was ordained. We can learn from the miracle atonement that individuals can be exiled from Londor, for it tells us, "Miracle given to those cast out from the Sable Church of Londor attracts more attention from foes. This is the only tale known by exiles, who believe it carries words of forgiveness. Cursed journeys too must come to an end." Again, it is the church that exile those from Londor, reinforcing the idea that they are the ruling caste. This tale is given to exiles, who believe it is a tale of forgiveness. However, the reality is it attracts more enemies, and therefore brings their journey to an end. This for me resonates with what Yule says about him failing to die as was ordained. This for me suggests he is an exile of the Sable Church. We see later he is found dead, and Yuria speaks of his redemption. Redemption most likely from whatever had him exiled, possibly turning on his own kind as the Purging Stone suggests. The way he finds redemption is by indenturing himself to us, and by drawing out our true potential. He does this by pulling out and increasing the power of the dark sigil. Its description reads, "A black gaping hole in the flesh that resembles the brand of an undead. The darkness of humanity seeps from this bottomless pitch-black hole, the gap filled by the accumulation of the curse." Yule clearly draws out whatever it is in humanity that makes them grow hollow and be cursed. By drawing it out, he specifically mentions the fact we are bearers of the dark sign. He draws out the very essence of the undead curse and marks us with the dark sigil. The hole is bottomless and extremely reminiscent of the abyss, the dark realm where light and bonfires have no power, but where humanity and the dark soul have power. This sigil allows us to hollow, something seen as a blessing by those of Londor, but seen as a curse by everyone else and in ages past. Once Yule has drawn out our true strength and allowed us to hollow, we find him dead, and in his place we find Yuria. She claims she is a friend of Yule, and she thanks us for giving him the chance to redeem himself in our service. In fact, Yuria is one of the sisters who founded the Sable Church. We can see from her ashes that having 3 founders of the Black Church ensured Yuria's legacy would survive. Her 2 sisters would carry the torch, making certain their lord claims the fire, for the sake of all the hollows. We can see, therefore, that Yuria is sister to Lilane, who is the youngest of the 3. We learn from Yuria's mask that she is the second eldest, for it states, "Attire of the 3 mentors of the Sable Church of Londor." This billed mask belongs to Yuria, the second eldest. These maidens of a primordial serpent were renowned as founders of the Sable Church, which offered salvation for hollows. We can therefore see that Yuria, Lilane, and the eldest sister were seen as mentors, and were renowned for being the founders of the church. We can also learn more of these sisters from the gauntlets of the outfit. It states, "It is apparent that the women in black were highly skilled fencers, capable of founding the Sable Church between just the 3 of them." We therefore learn that these women are exceptionally skilled combatants, and that it should be no surprise that these 3 sisters were capable enough of founding the Black Church themselves. We gain further evidence from the vow of silence miracle, for this states, "Members of the Sable Church are all trained swordsmen, each sworn to only their weapons, as they bear the leaden silence of Londor." The miracle tells us that members of the church are skilled combatants, sworn only to their swords. Now, I may be reading this wrong, but it seems to suggest they don't espouse the use of miracles, but only weapons. This would make sense that considering miracles are usually associated with the tales of the old gods and the old order, which the Sable Church is diametrically opposed to, as well as the fact that the miracle actually prevents the use of miracles itself. In addition, the miracle tells us that they bear the leaden or heavy silence of Londor, which again suggests a lack of tales and miracles. Yuria is a skilled combatant, and her choice weapon, Dark Drift, gives us even more of an insight into her prowess, for it states, "A cursed sword with an unseen blade, the choice weapon of Yuria of Londor." Yuria, a mentor of the Sable Church, an accomplished swordswoman, is said to have claimed 100 lives with this weapon. These 3 sisters are a force to be reckoned with. They wield weapons like Dark Drift, and they have the ability to destroy their enemies, and they have the charisma to lead an entire movement of hollows through our religion, and using such tales as those told by the youngest sister. In addition, we know they make use of assassins, such as the Pale Shades of Londor. Their choice weapon is the Mannequin Claw, and its description tells us, "Choice weapon of the Pale Shades, assassins of the Sable Church of Londor. The curved claws cause heavy bleeding." We can therefore see that these shades act as assassins for the Black Church. We get further insight from their mask, for it states, gold mask worn by those who kill in the name of the Sable Church of Londor. A faint, kindly smile is bound to its surface, giving them the moniker Harlots of Death. What lies beneath that expression, however, is nothing more than the face of a darkly shriveled hollow. Their armour states, attire worn by those who kill in the name of the Sable Church of Londor. The pale shades of the Sable Church are all undying hollows, giving rise to much fear and contempt. We can therefore see that these hollows were deadly and feared, because they were undying hollows who killed without honour and without mercy. No doubt these assassins carried out the bidding of the sisters, and were used to bring death to their enemies and anyone who threatened Londor. It also states that they had the moniker Harlots of Death. Now, harlot is a derogatory term for women, and if we take this alongside of the fact that the three ruling mentors of Londor are women, it suggests that Londor may be a matriarchal society. The three sisters are intelligent and they're deadly, and they have accomplished much between the three of them. But how? And why? The answer most likely lies with the description of Yuria's black set that we looked at previously. It gives mention of the fact that they are maidens of a primordial serpent, and as anyone who's played the first two games know, the first one in particular, this is a huge lore drop. As is a Dark Souls 3 lore video, I want to refrain from going over ground that a lot will be familiar with, but I'll touch on the link here today of the discussion a little bit of context. In Dark Souls 1, we can meet two primordial serpents, ancient beings who have inscrutable ambitions. One, Kingseeker Framt, claims to be a friend of Lord Gwyn, and encourages you to link the fire. You meet a second under certain conditions, in the emptiness of the abyss, a realm with no light, a realm where the first flame has no bearing. This serpent is Darkstalker Kath. He leads a group of knights who would become known as the Dark Wraiths, who he gave the ability to drain life and steal others' humanities. Again, I don't want to go too deeply into this, which I could, but for the sake of brevity, suffice it to say Kath wanted the Age of Light to end, believing that men and the undead are born of the dark, and that the Age of Dark is the next natural age. Without a doubt, Yuria and her sisters served Kath. If their idolization of the dark and rising up of hollows isn't enough to confirm this, then you can get solid confirmation if you kill Yuria. Her dying words are, Yuria and her sisters are servants of Kath, much like the Dark Wraiths were before them. And as always, we must suspect that Kath and his servants are trying to bring about the end of the Age of the Gods, having seen it gone on for too long unnaturally by the linking of the fire. The Dark Wraiths used the art of life drain through the artifact known as the Dark Hand. This has now been bequeathed to those of Londor. Yuria can sell it to us, and its description states, weapon that allows its wielder to evoke an art unique to Londor, the land of the hollow. It is also said to be an ancient relic of a primordial serpent. The Dark Hand mercifully saps at the essence of its victims. Kath has clearly chosen Londor as the successors of the Dark Wraiths, and his vehicle to bring about his ultimate aim. When we meet Yuria, Yul is dead, most likely killed by Yuria for failing to die. Yet she is thankful he found redemption in your service. She then asks,
That a lord art thou not, bearer of the dark Sigil, and our Lord of Hollows?
She immediately identifies us as a lord, and a lord of hollows, proclaiming her service. She calls us the rightful heir and liege of Londor, of hollows. She seems to speak for all of Londor when she says that she will follow you, and they will follow you, as Lord of the Hollows. She comments upon our intent to link the fire, but she asks us to play the Usurper, and to take the flame from its mantle, so that we Hollows, the most honest expression of men, may have it for our own. She tells us that the linking of the fire was instigated at the behest of the old gods, but the old gods are now long gone. This once again reflects Cath's view that in the true nature of things, humanity is the dark, and Yuria goes so far to state that hollows are the most true expression of men. Yuria will set us on the path to become the Lord of Hollows and usurp the fire. Unfortunately, it involves Anri and an old Londor tradition, for Yuria states,
"Knowest thou of a maid named Anri? She is hollow, and will join thee in wedlock."
Tells us that Anri is a hollow, and that they, he or she, depending on your gender, will be our spouse. They await us in the Dark Moon tomb, for how can we become a true monarch without a spouse? She tells us that a fellow of hers has guided Anri to the tomb. In reality, Anri has been tricked. She tells us that a pilgrim has told her how to get to Irithyll, no likely leading her into the trap. We then find Anri in the Church of Londor. In the corner of this room is a disguised pilgrim, looking like a statue. The pilgrims clearly operate as agents of Londor outside its borders, maybe believing it is a chance to redeem themselves. However, Yoel's fate should indicate otherwise. If we do not intervene by killing the fellow, this fellow will capture Anri and bring them to the Dark Moon crypt. When we arrive, we are greeted by a pilgrim, most likely the same fellow who captured Anri. They pass us an item of Londor, a traditional item used for weddings of this kind. It is the Sword of Avowal. Its description states, "Ceremonial Sword of Londor cannot be equipped as a weapon. It is said that a rite of wedlock will presage a true hollow lord. Your spouse's name is Anri, who patiently awaits a rightful lord, deep within the mausoleum. When we go in to meet our betrothed, we find them lying on their back, ceremoniously, with their helmet removed. The ceremonial item given to us is used in a Londor rite of wedlock, an event that is a precursor to the birth of a true hollow lord. When we reach Anri, we perform the rite of avowal, and see that this Londor rite is not a typical wedding at all. It is a rite that involves the sacrifice of one hollow, so that their dark sigil can be married to another, and thus creating a fully fledged Lord of Hollows. We see Anri's darkness seep into us, and thus our marriage is complete. When we leave the tomb, we find the pilgrim dead, and that shouldn't be too surprising this day. With our dark sigil combined with Anri's, Yuria's and Cath's plans are in place. When we defeat the Soul of Cinder, and the first flame stands before us, Yuria's words ring in our ears. Wrest the flame from its mantle, so that we hollows may have it. We take the flame, and we collapse. It's unclear what happens next, but it is clear that the dark sigil clearly has something to do with it. Because when we awake, the flame has gone out, and it is dark. We see the dark sign in the sky has a darkened hue, no doubt reflecting the absence of the flame. We also seem to have some connection to this mark in the sky, as we seem to rise it up as we rise. Yuria and her sisters and the Hollows of Londor greet us, as they are Lords of Hollows, and they beg us to make Londor whole. It would seem to me that Cath and his maidens have succeeded in ending the Age of Light, if we choose this ending, and the power of the flame is now in the hands of the Hollows, ripped from its mantle forever. And now we represent the new Dark Lord in the Age of Dark. So thanks for that, guys. I hope you enjoyed that one. The Sable Church of Londor is a really interesting one for me, but it's quite difficult for me to explain it coherently without taking a lot of my own conjecture. I did a little bit at the end there. There's a lot of lore in it, but there's not a lot that kind of bridges it between each other. So I took a lot of steps, so feel free to disagree with my interpretation. But I hope you enjoyed this, and please leave a comment, and I hope I'll see you next time. Thank you.